Hey guys, so I want to do a video today on a topic that I've seen a few other channels do, but something I've thought about a lot, and that is brand loyalty to specifically tool companies for somebody in the trades. This first kind of came into my mind after I got a Milwaukee pack out. I have DeWalt 20 volt tools, and one of my buddies was like, "Oh, you got those yellow tools in there. That's a crime," since it wasn't the seamless Milwaukee tools and the Milwaukee pack out. And I kind of came back and I was like, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of brand loyalty to tools. I just kind of get specifically what I like. And he's like, yeah, I'm just giving you grief. So before I get too ahead of myself, I mean, it's your money. You can do whatever you want. This is more so an opinion piece. And so recently I went and got the Fuel Surge M12 impact, because I've always liked the idea of having a smaller impact. When I first got into the electrical trade when I was 18, I went to my local tool shop that my uncle was an outside sales rep in, and I wanted to go with Makita. And I wanted to go with Makita because I saw somebody on site have this really teeny little screw gun that Makita had, and at the time, I think Makita was one of like the few brands that kind of had an option for just like a little devicing screw gun or impact. And he said, I'm not going to let you get Makita, you have to get DeWalt. So he just refused to let me get the Makita stuff, and he wanted me to go with the DeWalt stuff, which is fine. I mean, DeWalt has done great for me over the years, specifically my Sawzall. I had a Sawzall I had for like over 10 years, and it just finally crapped out on me, so I just had to buy a new one last fall. So there is kind of this controversy between different tool brands a little bit. Some people don't care. Some people say one is red, one's blue, one's yellow. Seems like that is certainly a marketing tool people use as they tap into our human nature of our kind of tribalism and that division piece, and also our kind of competitive nature. There's a lot of kind of just banter and horse around that you'll see between pickup trucks, Ford versus Chevy, or with beer and Coke versus Pepsi, etc. My main kind of thesis on this is I think that brand loyalty is good for the tool companies, but it's bad for us as consumers. Part of that is because if you're buying something just because it's Milwaukee. So I got the Milwaukee pack out. I love the Milwaukee pack out system. I plan on expanding and getting some drawers, and I got some other ideas I got for it. But let's say I'm just like, I'm getting a Milwaukee tool belt now. I'm getting Milwaukee screwdrivers, Milwaukee wire stripper, Milwaukee coffee cup, Milwaukee shirts, Milwaukee boots, Milwaukee tattoo, getting married in a Milwaukee suit. So what that does is that sends the designers and engineers kind of false signals to that brand that, hey, consumers like this product, so we should leave it alone. We shouldn't innovate, we shouldn't improve. Also, what it does is just kind of provides advertising through just having that brand name everywhere. I mean, you put the Milwaukee brand name or the DeWalt brand name or Ryobi or whatever, you got it everywhere now. And without even having to run ads, it saves them on marketing just because you have to buy into that system. I think, that's where a lot of this does come from, is that once you commit to that tool brand, you have to kind of be married to it, because if you get bought into their product line, you have all this investment in batteries that at times can be $100 a piece. Once you're sold into that product line, you have this investment into it. You don't want it, it's more difficult to change. So once they kind of got you, they got you. And also, obviously, it's good for corporations because it increases their revenue, keeps their profits high. They don't have to try as hard to get new consumers to buy their product, because it's just kind of interwoven into the job sites throughout everywhere. So it's bad for us, like I already mentioned, because it discourages specialization. So what I mean by the specialization, when I think of DeWalt nowadays, which this has changed even in the last 10 years, but when I think of DeWalt now, I think of it more as a brand, or the cordless tools, that is, as a brand kind of more geared towards carpenters and roofers and some of those big heavy duty stuff. That's just because recently they've kind of leaned into that 60 volt stuff where you can run a miter saw or landscaping tools, whatever, all day long on one of those big batteries. So I think they're kind of leaning more towards into that. And when I think of Milwaukee, I mean, they've gotten a lot more techie over the years, where they're almost kind of gearing towards their design towards a more specialty trade. So your HVAC and your plumbing and electrical, because that's what got me interested in wanting to get an M12, because I've always wanted one of these things because I think they're sweet. This is a fuel surge, so it's quieter too. It's supposed to be like the 75 decibels or something. And I mean, these things, the battery life is good on them. They're torquey. I mean, they're tough and they're small. They're comfortable. I love anything lightweight. But also, now that I got the M12 stuff, now I'm kind of into the M12 brand. It's really no, grief for me having the 20 volt DeWalt's and the M12 because they use different battery chargers anyway. But now I want to get the inspection camera for fishing wire. It's kind of what I'm after too. I just have the different M12 product lines available to me now with those special tools, since I kind of already got invested in this. So when I think of Milwaukee, they kind of think of more so like the Batman gadgets, because they got all sorts of different specialty power tools for plumbing, HVAC, electrical. As well as I'm sure they have a fine, I've never really used much of the 18 volt stuff, but I bet they have a great brand product line for that stuff too. But for me, that's kind of just my opinion, how I kind of view them over the years. That's kind of how they've changed. I mean, when I started out in the trade, it was like everybody was using DeWalt and there was hardly anybody using Milwaukee. I didn't really start seeing people use Milwaukee until probably like 2015, 2016, around that time. You started to see them a little bit more used in the electrician trade anyway. More specialization stuff is, I got my Vito tech bag in the back, got the OTMC right here. So when I research a brand and try to spend my hard-earned dollars on something, I like to go for the brands where they just specialize in that thing. Like, levels, Empire. I have an Empire level. I've had Klein levels. I've had different kinds of levels, but I mean, Empire, primarily a level company, so they specialize in that niche. Same thing with Vito. I could get a Klein bag, I can get a Milwaukee bag, DeWalt, and I'm sure they're all fine. But for me, I like to trust my dollar in a company that is actually specializing in that product. That's just me. So that's why, when I go after my tool bags, I'm all about Boulder tool bags. I think are great. Occidental leather too is another popular one where that's their specialty. They're not selling drills, they're selling tool bags, right? Fluke. I use my tick tester, my meter is Fluke. They're specializing in testing instruments. I don't have a Klein meter, I don't have a Milwaukee meter. And I mean, you'll even see that now too. Like I haven't heard fantastic things yet about the Milwaukee backpack or pack out backpack stuff. I've heard they're kind of bulky, kind of awkward, where, I've heard good things about some of the Vito backpacks, just from comments on my videos and stuff. And I mean, like I said, take all this with a grain of salt, because a lot of it is that compatibility piece too, I suppose. I mean, it's nice when you have the Milwaukee pack out system, everything just stacks together. I mean, if you know somebody with a 3D printer like I do, or if you go on Etsy or some other of those forums, you can pretty much get anything you want for pack out system. I put pack out feet on the bottom of my Vito tech bag to make it work. It's past the warranty anyway, so I just screwed it in. But yeah, although, like I say, that's what I do, and that's, from my years of wisdom, I guess, that has worked for myself. I've just seen, even like the meters, like a lot of my students, their multimeters they got are all Klein, and they don't spend a little bit extra money on the Fluke or whatever just because their hand tools are Klein. That's what I like about Klein too, is Klein is a really good just overall brand. I mean, their pack outs are sweet. Their screwdrivers are excellent. It's probably my favorite thing about Klein is their screwdrivers. Their pliers are also really good if you're talking about like needle nose and linemen's and stuff. I don't like their wire strippers. When it comes to pliers, I use Knipex, but I'm not interested, even if Knipex put one out, I'm not interested in a Knipex Impact personally. I just don't really see the point in needing to have everything have the same brand in my setup. Like I said in the beginning of it, it's your money, do what you want. But I'd be curious to hear your opinion about kind of just trend of brand loyalty, because I do think it is kind of trending a little bit more, where people are just really trusting in these brands for just pumping out quality. And inflation and times are tough and work hard for your money. It kind of sucks if you're investing all this money, $300 for a tool backpack or something. I think that's how much Milwaukee is charging for their pack out backpack, is like $350 or something. Spend all that money, it's like you want to make sure that you're getting that value out of it, not just, oh, this is Milwaukee, so I'm going to buy this and I don't care how much it costs, because there is probably cheaper that is just as good, and you can just buy some pack out feet that are 3D printed and glue it on the bottom or something. I don't know. Brands aren't truly what they used to be. Quality does decline for sure. I mean, what one brand was 10 years ago isn't always what's going to be the case now. I live in the Upper Plains area on the border, state border with North Dakota next to Minnesota. So Red Wing boots are a big thing, or were a big thing, because of just the Minnesota pride of boots are made in Minnesota. And if you go on Red Wing's site, you'll just see all these reviews of all these old heads being like, Red Wing isn't what it used to be. You spend $300 on a pair of boots, and my old pair lasted me 12 years, and these new pair lasted me 3 months, and whatever. And I think, you know, I was watching a video on Essential Craftsman. It's an older gentleman, a carpenter contractor. He was talking about how he used Porter cable forever, and then now Porter cable kind of sucks, and he goes back in time and tries to find stuff on eBay of brand new tools from the 90s and stuff from Porter cable just because he loved them. And that's true, man. I mean, I think that I saw that with Klein's wire strippers when I first got into the trade. I liked Klein's wire strippers, and then they would constantly just bind up all the time. And then I went from Klein to Ideal, and I thought what was sweet about the Ideal, I think they're called Reflex, and that's what I was using before I got into the Knipex wire stripper, was the Ideal. And they were great, man. I mean, they were way cheaper than Klein. I think they were even made in the US, and they were cheaper and better than Klein's wire strippers with a similar design. And you weren't missing out anything, but people weren't buying them as much. I wouldn't see Ideal wire strippers in as many tool pouches just because they didn't say Klein on it. So even with Klein, it's like I really love their screwdrivers. Their Lymans are great. Needle nose is awesome. Like, a lot of their pliers are good, but the strippers I thought were kind of bad. We were a little tighter with our dollar, a little bit more conscientious of it, and protesting a little bit that we're going to invest all this money into something, spend an astronomical amount of money on, whether it be tool bags or power tools or what have you. Hopefully we're getting that value out of that. And I don't think those design teams and those engineers are going to be able to improve those products if we send them missed signals of just blind faith in a brand. All right, thanks everybody for watching. Take care.